Good evening. Thank you for joining us for this program. My name is Selena Joffrey, and I'm the Director of Business and Policy at Asia Society Texas Center. The topic for this evening's webcast is small business exporting in Asia and beyond, and we're honored to partner with the U.S. Small Business Administration. For many small businesses, exports are a way to achieve financial stability and growth, especially in a competitive economy still strained by the ongoing pandemic. Doing business with Asia, which is a booming market, offers significant opportunities for small businesses to enter new markets and expand their global footprint. In tonight's program, we'll hear from experts on how to find and meet foreign buyers, how to seek help with export insurance and risk management, and how businesses can find funding and export loans specifically designed to help businesses expand into export activities in Asia and beyond. To discuss this, we're pleased to have a panel of experts. Brent Klepko is an international trade specialist at U.S. Commercial Services in Houston. Prior to that, Brent worked for a defense contractor specializing in fast boat production and then as a field engineer in oil and gas drilling operations. Eric Miller is the Houston Regional Director for Export-Import Bank. Prior to joining the bank, Eric spent over a decade in the private sector exporting capital equipment to buyers in 33 countries, covering the continents of Africa, Asia, South America, and Europe. Mark Winchester is the Deputy District Director for the Houston District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. His duties include overseeing the delivery of SBA programs and services in the 32 counties served by the district. Last year, this included over $1.5 billion in loan guarantees and surety for small businesses in the district. Moderating the program is Dr. Sunny Zhang, who is a researcher, educator, entrepreneur, and investor focusing on behavioral science and digital innovation. She's a founding partner at Z-Lab Ventures, building and investing in impact-driven tech startups, and a tenured marketing professor at University of St. Thomas. Following the program, we'll be taking some viewer questions, so please share your questions via the YouTube comment box. We hope you enjoy the program. Over to you, Sunny.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Selena. Such a pleasure to be here today moderating this amazing panel of the experts you need to explore the opportunity of exporting in Asia. So first of all, some quick facts. Did you know that 50% of the global consumer class live in Asia? According to Statista, India, China, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, these are fastest growing consumer markets in the world between 2020 and 2030. In addition to all the very familiar economies like Japan, South Korea, and Indonesia alone is going to add 76 million consumer class, more than 3 times the growth of the United States at 24 million. So there's tremendous opportunities for you all. Let's get started to get our experts' perspective and all the resources that helps you to take advantage of all the amazing opportunities. We're going to start with our great friend, Mark Winchester, the Deputy Director of Small Business Administration, Houston District Office. So Mark, can you please let us know how can SBA help businesses who want to export in terms of the resources, the support, and the lending products?
Dr. Sunny, great question. To the audience, once again, my name is Mark Winchester. I'm the Deputy District Director for the United States Small Business Administration, Houston District Office. SBA was created in 1953, and SBA's mission is to make the American dream of business ownership a reality. And SBA is known for its 4 C's: capital, contracting, counseling, and crisis. But here tonight, I'm here to talk to you about capital, but more specifically, export financing. And export financing is part of the Office of International Trade, which also has additional resources, Dr. Sunny, which includes the United States Export Assistance Center, District International Trade Officer, and our SBA resource partners.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was a quick, great overview of SBA and also the export-related resources. Let's move to Eric, who's at the Export-Import Bank as the regional director. So Eric, why don't you share with us what kind of services does EXIM Bank offer?
Absolutely. Great question, Sunny. And thank you to the Asian Chamber of Commerce for the invitation to participate, as well as the Small Business Administration. We are delighted and excited to be here. Export-Import Bank, we go by EXIM for short. We're an export finance agency. We're a small little federal agency set up in the executive branch. We've got about 400 employees. And our job is to help U.S. companies put U.S.-made goods and services into the hands of foreign buyers. And some of the ways that we do that is on the finance side. So our flagship product really for small business is called Export Credit Insurance. So one of the statistics that the commercial services, I'm gonna give Brent credit for this, that they commonly use is that 95% of the world's buyers are outside the United States. So there's a vast blue ocean out there. If you're only paying attention to domestic business, you're ignoring the majority of buyers. So when you start tapping into that, one of the common challenges we see with exporters is they'll say, hey, here's a product I make, and I need cash in advance. Send me a wire transfer if you want to buy it, and I'll ship it to you. And then the foreign buyer says, well, I'm kind of nervous about sending you money because what if I don't get my product? So there's this back and forth level of trust that may not be established yet. And we want to get involved in that process and help the exporter with the product I mentioned, which is called Export Credit Insurance. And it's exactly how it sounds. So the exporter will say, here's my product, pay me 60 days later, pay me 30 days later, whatever it may be. They give them that credit term to buy their product, and we back them up on that payment. We insure that foreign payment. So if the foreign buyer does not pay the exporter puts a claim into us, just like any other insurance policy, and we pay them. So we can dive into that later. I just wanted to give a very general overview that Export Credit Insurance is really our flagship product for small business. Thank you, Sunny.
Thanks, Eric. That was perfect. And that brings us to Brent. So as the international trade specialist at U.S. Commercial Services, Brent, what are the top 3 things you do to help American companies export?
Sure. Well, welcome. First off, I want to thank the Asia Society and Sunny for doing this, and everyone behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, because it's a lot of work, and we appreciate it. I know Mark and Eric does as well. Basically, the bottom line, and we'll talk more about this, but I just want to think more big picture initially. Our main goal as an organization, which we're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and a subset of that is the International Trade Administration. The U.S. Commercial Service is that we're part of that group. And our main focus at the U.S. Commercial Service to help you, similar to Eric, but our job is to get your goods into foreign markets. Now, there's a lot of auxiliary benefits that we do as well, but I just want to talk on 5 little topics and 5 little headers that as we go forward, we'll get more information out of them. But just think big picture, and we're here to be a conduit to your growth. And we offer trade counseling, market research, intro to buyers and distributors. We do promotion and brand awareness, and we do trade missions. It's a lot of information, but at our trade.gov website, please go to it when you get an opportunity, even during this video, and you'll get more information about the details we do. We have a great team in Houston. We have 100 offices in the U.S. and over 70 around the world in embassies and consulates. basically, when you work with the U.S. Commercial Service in our office or another city, you basically get a network of over 170 offices that are at your disposal. And we'll help you with Eric and we'll help you with Mark, get in contact. But we're really here to help you grow your products. And we'll get more into details later. But thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating as well.
Thanks so much, Brent. Honestly, it's music to my ears because I've been teaching global marketing MBA class for the past decade, over a decade. And that's exactly what we need to do to start with market research. You don't just like, who's exporting? Let's get the products over. You need to actually, there's a lot of prep work. And it seems like you guys are helping all these businesses to get everything done step by step, from the research, the counseling, to introductions to buyers, distributors, and even promotion and presence overseas. And actually, Mark has told me a lot about what you do at U.S. Commercial Services, both domestically, but also internationally. So I'm going to come back to Mark, since it seems like financing is a major theme, right? Mark, so how can a business owner determine which bank they could go to in terms of participating in trade financing? And I'm going to also add another question, because nowadays even startups can, have a global mindset and start even when they're, small businesses, right? In the spirit of that, maybe you could also touch on how can startup businesses qualify for these loans and financial opportunities.
Dr. Sunny, great questions. Number one, Dr. Sunny, is you don't go to SBA for a loan. You go to an SBA lender that participates in the SBA loan guarantee. So number one, Dr. Sunny, we have an association of government guaranteed lenders right here in Houston, and it's called Hagel. And the website for Hagel, Dr. Sunny, is just www.haggl.com. And the majority, if not all, the SBA lenders are also part of, here in Houston, part of the Houston Association of Government Guaranteed Lenders. So that's number one, Dr. Sunny. Number two, Dr. Sunny, is that the SBA Houston District Office on our website, which is www.sba.gov/TX/Houston. When you go to the website, we have a PDF file of our SBA Houston resource guide. And Dr. Sunny, our resource guide is tabbed. I mentioned the 4 C's: capital, contracting, counseling, and crisis. And the 4 C's are tabbed right in our resource guide. They're color coded. And so within our resource guide, under funding, which is our capital, Dr. Sunny, in our funding section of our resource guide, we have a very complete list of lenders also in our resource guide. And Dr. Sunny, in our resource guide, we also list separately, still in the funding section, but we have a separate lender list of just those lenders that participate in export financing. So those are 2 great resources: Hagel website, and then also our website, and going to the resource guide, going to the funding section, and then reviewing just the international lenders. Now, Dr. Sunny, in regards to your second question, it really goes back, Dr. Sunny, to your observation about marketing. Just like a business would need to conduct research marketing domestically, just like they would conduct research in public contracting, they really need to do their research as it applies to exporting. And so we have the SBA resource partners, including the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Center. We have SCORE Chapter 37, and we have 2 women's business centers. And those SBA resource partners can assist in the market research to determine if this is really viable for them. One last comment, Dr. Sonny. Similar to public contracting, we really recommend at SBA and with our partners that a business be in business at least 2 years before really getting into exporting. And Dr. Sonny, I hope I've answered both of your questions.
That was perfect, Mark. I also noticed you mentioned when it comes to, financing options, the risk, right? And I think that's a perfect moment when we catch up with Eric again, since he mentioned this flagship program, right? The export credit insurance program. I wonder, how does that work, Eric? And what kind of risks do you cover through the program?
Great question, Sonny. Yeah, so we've got really 4 different policies, export credit insurance policies. I would say the most popular for small business is what we call our express insurance. And the exporter, the US company, can basically pick and choose up to 10 foreign buyers to add to that policy. So they can essentially cherry pick who they want, who they don't want. And once they're added to that policy and they have a policy, basically they ship their product or services, by the way. I don't want to breeze over services, because if a company is engineering, accounting, legal services, whatever it may be, if they're providing services and billing that on credit to a foreign buyer, just as if they were to ship a product on credit, we can protect that. So once they're in their policy and they're protected, they're approved, they ship the product or do the service, they bill it on terms, they pay us a small fee to insure that payment. And then if they don't pay, they go ahead and put a claim into us, and we give them either 90 or 95% of what's due to them. So there is a little, 5 to 10% risk on what's outstanding to them that they do have to consider. It's simple to get started. Eligibility is usually 3 years in business, a prior profitable fiscal year, a positive net worth, selling a US made good or service. And we do business of all sizes. It could be a company that does $100,000 in sales revenue a year, and it could be a company that does, much more in the millions. We have our own selfish interest in that process. Government's involved in exports because we want to help the trade deficit, right? We are nearing a $1 trillion trade deficit this year. So we're bringing in a lot of stuff and not really sending that much back out. So we want to get involved and help US companies be more productive and profitable, and ultimately create jobs, because that's how we get judged in Congress, is how many jobs are you creating with these finance products? So back to your question, they can pick and choose one of the 4 policies. We'll approve them. We'll approve each buyer, and then they're covered for 1 year. And it's renewable. It covers 2 buckets of risk. One is commercial, the other is political. So commercial is going to be things like bankruptcy, insolvency, more than 90 days past due. The political is going to be things like war, currency and convertibility, loss of import license, things that are political in nature. So we cover most areas in the spectrum of risk, and we want to protect that exporter's foreign buyers' payment so they can feel comfortable and sleep at night, sending their product away in a container or wherever it may be going, and know that we've got their back on the payment.
That sounds perfect, Eric, because you're absolutely right. Because when you say, they can sleep at night, when you're doing business across border, there's so much uncertainty, there's so much risks. So it's really nice to know somebody's got their back. So, really appreciate everything you guys are doing there. Now, going to Brent, because Eric, you actually credited him for some of the data you mentioned earlier about all these amazing opportunities, specifically in Asia, right? So, Mark and you provided a lot of resources. I believe that's, export across board. Brent, I'm coming back to you in terms of exporting specifically to Asia. Would you help us get an overview of why should businesses consider exporting there? And what are the strategies you would recommend entering the market, especially for those that are relatively new to the market, since there's the information asymmetry, I have to say, right? Due to language and culture barriers.
Sure. So there's really great news for everybody who's on the call. if you're beginning to export, but you have some experience, that's fantastic. And to the experience, whether it's market entry or market expansion. The most important is if you have an export plan, that's super important, but I'm going to give you the best news. Asia is my favorite market. And what I mean by that are a few key points. And it's really important in business world, everybody on this call, watching on YouTube, et cetera, is that when you're developing your export plan, obviously one of the most important thing is, besides market research, and besides, say you've done your market research, you have a game plan, but then you have to get to the fundamentals of that market. And on a global macro scale in Asia, all things being equal, there are some markets more, it's a very huge market, but they pay. And what I mean by that is they have a consistent standard of paying for services. And when you're getting paid for your product being overseas, that's very helpful, because regardless of each country, you want to get paid for your business. And Eric can offer protection for that trade. Mark has additional loan protections. But the bottom line is, after you've done a year of market research and market entry, at the end of that fourth quarter, have you seen any income? They do a great job in Asia, generally of paying. I think it's ingrained in an early age in Asia. And also, they're very serious about business. Generally, I'm a little bit more gregarious and outgoing. I'm like Sonny in this capacity. I'm a little loud. Sometimes I say the wrong things, but generally, Eric and Mark can attest to this. I'm a good person, and we have your interest at heart. And we'll speak the truth to you about this when you go into Asia. We'll help you do research. But we're also going to tell you the real information, because when you're business planning each quarter and you're doing your reports, if you're the CEO or if you're a junior staffer, you want accurate information, good or bad. And there are a few bad points I just want to talk about when it comes to Asia. Now, each country is very specific, but government interference can be a problem. You have regulations that can be a problem. Corruption can be a problem. Unfair tender trades. And the reason why I mention this is, just as Eric and all of us and Mark, we do risk assessments when we're planning. Just add a different risk analysis per country, because you will have loss and you will have gain. It's just a matter of what you can do. But obviously, China's got some major upside and some major downside. Japan's a very mature market. Vietnam is expanding, but they have some not handicaps, but they have some things that they need to work on, But overall, we're here at the U.S. Commercial Service to facilitate your growth. Don't think it's too much information and it's overwhelming. We can direct you to Eric or to Mark if need be on the finance side. But on our main goal, the U.S. Commercial Service, is to make your transition to a new market or expanding and help you overcome those barriers. And the good news is we're pretty successful as an organization, because when we reach out to the U.S. Embassy in Malaysia, and we have conference calls, MS Teams call, when they reach out to people in Malaysia, when the U.S. government reaches out to you in foreign markets, generally it's a good thing. And they want to work with us because they know we're U.S. companies, all things being equal, that we're reliable. We have the rule of law. We make payments. And generally, we're held accountable. So don't think too much about if this is overwhelming, because just on anything in life, you can't get to second base until you go to first base. And you can't get to first base until you show up at the plate. Now, there may be questions, but we're here for you. So my main purpose of this whole call tonight is to assure you that if you're on this call, you're thinking about expanding your market growth. And we're here to help you. So all you have to do is go to trade.gov, do some research, and reach out to us, and we'll direct you, whether it's to Mark to help you on some of his positive things he offers, or Eric, or if it's someone in DC. But and then one last thing on this, Sonny, if you don't mind, is we have something called commercial country guides. If you go to trade.gov and you type in commercial country guides, our CCG. It'll take you to our landing page for each country around the world, except for a few ones. And we'll give you background from A to Z on that market. Now, is it 100% updated to the minute? No, but it's our colleagues around the world, and we offer. So if you want to learn about going to Singapore, the distribution hub of Southeast Asia, you go to our commercial country guide, you can just type it in Singapore, and you can learn a lot about shipping, regulations, good things, bad things, and then it'll help you do your research, and that's free. And we all like free things. So thank you, Sunny.
Thanks, Brent. I love it. And like you said, right, a lot of resources that we're sharing tonight, it is publicly available and free for everyone. I felt like, as a marketing professor, I just felt like sometimes all we need to do is to make it more visible, more accessible, and more known among the business owners who are interested, because a slight interest will lead to some digging, right? Once they visit your website, they get to know more. The more we learn, the less uncertainty we feel. I mean, sometimes we don't take action because we fear of all these consequences. But the good news is, like Brent said, we've got your back. And I love the fact that all these organizations are working together. U.S. Commercial Services and SBA and EXIM Bank. It's like, although it's different organizations, but it's a really collaborative approach. So back to you, Mark. We talked about exporting. I wonder, are SBA loan programs for exporting only, or can business also qualify for a loan in terms of importing goods?
Dr. Sunny, great question. What it is the SBA export financing, including the international trade loan, which is up to $5 million for land, building, and equipment with a 90% guarantee. And we have the export working capital loan up to $5 million with a 90% guarantee. And we have the Export Express, $350,000 with a 90% guarantee, and up to $500,000 with a 75% guarantee. But Dr. Sunny, you're absolutely right. That financing that SBA offers, export financing, is only for exporting. Now, while we were, answering questions, Sunny, I thought about the second part of that question. And what it is, Dr. Sunny, is we still have the 7A program. Dr. Sunny, the 7A program is really the umbrella. It is the overarching program for all of our financing. And the 7A program can be used for U.S. businesses. And Dr. Sunny, let's say a business is exporting, they still could get the 7A loan for their warehouse, for their inventory, for their office. Maybe they need computers. Maybe they need working capital. So it can't, the export financing can't be used for importing, but we still have our traditional 7A program. And I'll share this, Dr. Sunny. Our 7A program goes from $50,000 all the way up to $5 million with a 75% guarantee. And the other thing I was going to share, Dr. Sunny, is many of our exporters here in Houston, not only do they utilize our export financing, but they also utilize our 7A program.
You're muted, Sunny. Oh, there you go.
Excellent, Mark. Thanks, Eric. Mark, I also heard about the STEP program. Do you also want to briefly mention that to the audience?
Dr. Sunny, thank you so much for mentioning that or sharing that. The STEP program stands for State Trade Expansion Program. And this is another program, Dr. Sunny, through our Office of International Trade. And it is a grant program up to $10,000 And it's a grant program that is administered by each state. Obviously, we're in Texas, so the state of Texas Department of Agriculture administers SBA's State Trade Expansion Program. And Dr. Sonny, nearly a third of the grant money that comes to Texas goes to businesses right here in the greater Houston area. Just in the last, I would say, last 3 years, and I would say more specifically prior to the pandemic, $1.2 million in state trade expansion program grants. And of that, 350 to 400,000 went to exporting businesses right here in Houston. Now, there is a process for that, Dr. Sonny. They need to apply, they need to be an eligible business, and they must submit expenses that they're going to incur and then get pre-approved for those expenses. Then they're going to have to incur those expenses, and then they will get reimbursed for those expenses.
Excellent. It's really great to see all these resources and financing products provided by SBA. And I wonder, Eric, since it seems like EXIM also provides so many financial kind of products, would you maybe share with us how do the SBA financing products differ from what you guys are providing at the Export-Import Bank?
Great question, Sonny. Yeah, and before I address that, let me take a couple steps back. So the problem we have here in the U.S. banking system as it relates to export finance is when the U.S. company who's trying to export, they get a purchase order from Singapore for $1 million, $500,000, whatever it may be. They get a PO from a reputable foreign company, and excited as they may be, they walk over to the bank. Hey, I got a PO from this company in Singapore. I need $300,000. I need $500,000. I need $1 million line of credit. I got to make this stuff and ship it over there. As soon as that lender, generally speaking, as soon as that lender hears the word export or Singapore or Asia, doors are starting to close. Can't help you. And think about it from the lender's perspective. It's risky. They don't want to give a loan to a U.S. company to make stuff, and then the company in Asia just cancels a purchase order. Now they got this stuff, could be specialized for that company, and they don't know what to do with it. Then they can't pay the bank back, and then they have a default. So the bank tries to avoid that. So the government gets involved. SBA gets involved. We get involved. And we tell the lender, hey, if the company meets the credit standards, if they look good, they meet all the financial ratios, they're asking for $500,000 and they qualify, you're just saying no because of the word export, go ahead and give them the money they need and we'll co-sign. We'll be a loan guarantor to that loan and back up that repayment to the lender. So we take away the repayment risk on the lender side. So now they can comfortably give a line of credit to the exporter, knowing that we've got the lenders back in case something goes wrong. So SBA has a great portfolio of finance products. We have we're a little different. There's a little overlap sometimes. Where there's a little overlap is on our working capital line of credit. They have one, we have one. Where we differ is they stop at 5 million, we go past that. So usually if it's +5, they'll send it our way. Now, if there's a content issue where we require US content, US made, if they have a problem there, then we usually send them to the SBA because they don't have that content. Now, it's also the lender's choice on whether they want to use an SBA guarantee or an EXIM guarantee. And usually there's a different list of lenders for each. So we say start with the exporter's bank, whoever that is, and then ask them about export finance if that's what they need. And they'll tell you whether they're working with SBA or EXIM. So that's kind of, instead of the exporter having to figure that out, their lender will figure that out on which one they use. But yeah, it's a good question. It's one we get asked often in the sense that we both have an export working capital line of credit. Thank you.
Yeah, that helps a lot, Eric, just so that, when people have needs, they can make the right decisions. But overall, my impression is it's all about risk perception and risk management, right? Especially when you're going to a foreign territory which goes back to what Brent mentioned earlier about all these uncertainty. You mentioned some policy issues, challenges in different countries. So in terms of that, Brent, what are the challenges and trade barriers that business owners might be facing in terms of like all these risk perception so that they can better prepare themselves?
Sure. Great. It's a good question. Super important. Just as we do, I always sometimes will talk with local companies and ask them when they were establishing their game plan for the Houston market or wherever they are, the amount of energy and time they put into planning for domestic growth or just starting up their business, they have to be prepared to spend that type of energies towards growing their market internationally. The good news is they have a domestic, they've already started. So just to kind of rinse, repeat to get internationally, it's obviously very different, but without knowing to say a specific country, I'm just going to speak on the 50,000 foot level. That generally what happens. And what I generally like to say is I'm going to mention companies that are generally successful in what they do, and then the companies that aren't successful generally when they go overseas. And we'll just pick Southeast Asia, for instance. We're just going to pretend these companies are both established and selling domestically, and they have a good, healthy company. The company with the export plan is generally more successful. And you may ask, doesn't that seem like a basic premise to start off your growth? It is, but it doesn't always generally happen because, sometimes we've made it U.S. and we think, why can't we do it overseas? Well, it's such a unique market. Wherever you go into, it's generally very different than working and selling to your local school board or your local energy company, that you just have to plan. We can help you with this and help you develop and offer you common sense. But for instance, say in Vietnam, if this is a big problem, Sonny, and we all know this, everybody on this call, this happens in other markets as well. It's not Vietnamese specific, but I'll just use them. Say there's a government tender on a project, and we have something called the Advocacy Center where we can, through an application and a process, support you on that government tender in Vietnam. But say before that process, say you've been awarded the tender. Some countries will then change the tender rules until it fits their profile of a company. Some companies will just ignore who won the tender award. So we're kind of there to help you in that process. So if there is nefarious things going on, there's only so much we can do in foreign markets. The U.S. government or embassy we don't play rough. We just have to try our best. But they want to do well, work well with us. I know I recently had a great client in India. They changed the tender rules 3 different times. I'm not going to get into specifics of what happened, but that's very disappointing to a company that put in a lot of office hours. They did market research. They spent time in getting there. But the more you can reach out to us earlier in the process, the more we can help you avoid some of these obstacles. But there's a lot of great opportunity. It's just that, our commercial country guides are great starting points. I would just end with this. The obstacles you faced domestically are there when you go internationally. But when you overcome those obstacles here, it's similar to overseas, because I think Spain's export of their GDP is around 30%. And Mark or Eric, I think ours is around 12 to 13% of our GDP, give or take. Well, I don't like the Spanish beating us, and that's by an example of when we sell our goods internationally, Sally can hire new people. John can get a new job. It just expands our tax base. It grows us culturally, socially, economically. The more we can create partnerships, some are more difficult, but I'm just going to stick on this theme, Sonny, is reach out to us and we'll help you.
Absolutely, Brent. That was perfect because really, the resources are right there. And coming to holiday season, right? We just had Thanksgiving break. Christmas is ahead of us. Everybody's shopping for gifts Black Friday, we already felt the order has such, delay in terms of the global supply chain. So has that impacted exporting, importing? And do you see the trend in the coming year? And I'm also going to maybe just relate that with the pandemic. Have you noticed any trend in your work regarding, which businesses might be hit harder and also bounce back faster as we recover?
Is that to me?
Yeah, we're going to go across the board.
Yeah, it's good. That's good.
Yep.
So it's a very, as we all know on this call, this is a very tricky question. So I'm going to stay kind of 50,000 foot level, but I'm going to give you a few websites that I want you to go to. If you go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor, and we have something called the MXP, which is the Import-Export Price Indexes. This can give you a great analysis of what specific markets around the world and territories are suffering. It's much more detailed than I can explain on a small call. But as we know on this, or maybe not for some of those, there's that story about the butterfly in Brazil that causes a hurricane eventually because it goes to water, et cetera, and it messes with Africa rain, and then it comes back across the Atlantic. That a small thing, a small ripple can change a supply chain. So we can imagine what's happening now, that the supply chains have ripples. And when there's a ripple in the supply chain, every part of that business is affected. So right now we're suffering in China and India, and when their goods can't get out or they can't come in, it affects us. If Eric and his team and Mark, when it comes to financing, it affects us. When it comes to travel, it affects us. So in the Department of Commerce, we have a good little website. I encourage people to go there. It's called COVID Information Hub. You just go to commerce.trade.gov, type in COVID, and you'll get a bunch of information. Some of it will redirect you to Mark and the SBA. Some of them will direct you to Eric. They'll give you background about other issues. Please take the best and leave the rest. But I would say, I'm not speaking for the entire U.S. government here, but just from watching Bloomberg and talking to colleagues and businesses, we're looking for a difficult year in 22, because recovery doesn't happen in the U.S. global trade in months, as we know. It takes years. And generally, I'm under the impression that today I was hearing some speakers from BlackRock and a few other important business leaders that were mentioning they're looking at late fall of 22 to see some type of economic growth. But I will end on this. I'm not the expert on that. So I'll defer to people to go to much more important people than me on how that's going to turn out.
This is already very helpful, Brent, because you just provided amazing resources for those interested to dig even further. There's tremendous information out there for us to conduct research about the impact. Mark, have you observed anything from your perspective in terms of the pandemic and the global supply issues?
Dr. Sunny, great question. Dr. Sunny, there are 32 million small businesses throughout the United States. Right here in Houston, there are over 750,000 small businesses. And Dr. Sunny, they were pretty much all impacted by the pandemic. Dr. Sunny, over 325,000 small businesses received either Paycheck Protection Program loan or economic injury disaster loan. These 325,000 small businesses just in Houston alone received over $40 billion in assistance, either through the PPP program or the economic injury disaster loan. And I'll share this, Dr. Sani, in regards to the economic injury disaster loan, it is still available and small businesses can apply and receive up to $2 million in loan, an SBA guaranteed loan, to have up to 30 years to pay it back at an interest rate of 3.75% interest rate. Now, the small business needed to have been in business by January 31st, 2020, and they'll need to demonstrate that they were economically impacted by COVID-19. But Dr. Sonny, it's a great question. We do have that program. Small businesses can go to www.sba.gov/coronavirus. And from there, click on EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and apply. Dr. Sonny, regarding specific businesses, and I shared that over 325,000 had applied. There were businesses in the hospitality industry, accommodation industry, the restaurant industry, live venue nonprofits, and performing arts businesses were impacted. And Dr. Sonny, in regards to supply chain backup, we are seeing that. We are seeing that with small businesses. Businesses are seeing anywhere from 30 to 50% increase in cost of goods sold. They're seeing delays in the supplies being delivered. And Dr. Sonny, the other thing that we've seen, particularly here in Houston, but I'm sure it's across the United States, is the manpower. It's the staffing. It is the shortage in workforce for our small businesses.
You're absolutely right. In fact, Mark, what we're currently going through is the so-called great resignation, right? Some of the reasons that there's the delay of delivery, it's actually not the international ocean container part. It's actually from the port, the lack of truck drivers delivering to the rest of the country. So they're stuck. And to your comment about Houston versus other parts of the United States, I just wish we could reroute them to Houston Port since this is Asia Society Texas Center. So I wanted to shout out for what we're doing here. Eric, do you have any comments regarding the global logistics and also pandemic related observations?
Yeah, sure. I'll throw out some general comments. So going to the flagship product I described earlier on, which is a credit insurance, that was of huge help during coronavirus, because when we protected all those payments and we had thousands, tens of thousands of exporters and policies, when we insured all those payments and coronavirus hit, government shutdowns were occurring, containers were sitting at ports, customers weren't getting their products, they weren't paying. We were a big step into that, and we were happy to do it. We were happy to pay our exporters the money that was owed to them against the policy. So generally speaking, that's a lot of that's been alleviated now, but now we got supply chain issues. So the credit insurance is there. Keep that in mind. It's there to protect you. It's there to help you. And I'll just give you some general comments regarding the pandemic as it relates from an exporter's perspective. I'll give you some stories. So when coronavirus hit a few months later, I was dealing with a company in Texas, and they manufactured pregnancy tests, and they pivoted. And that's the key word, pivot. When they're, from the words of a great entrepreneur, for every challenge, there's an opportunity. They realized they should focus on COVID testing. So they swapped out the stick from a pregnancy test to a COVID test. And, their revenue stream didn't dip at all. They were, plenty successful. It actually grew during this pandemic because they pivoted and focused where there was an opportunity, although there was obvious challenges as well. So pivoting in times of challenges such as what we're facing now is certainly necessary. One of the other comments I heard from an exporter is where they're finding success in foreign countries is they're looking at a couple different data points. One of them being vaccination rates. This is not me saying go there. This is an exporter saying this is where they've had success. Finding countries where the highest vaccination rates are, focusing on selling into those countries. and also considering government policy in these foreign countries. So if a policy of a government is, when COVID spikes, shut everything down, well, maybe we shouldn't be focusing there, because if I've got stuff on the water and it can't get to my buyer, then there's a problem. So they mentioned to me, those were a couple of things that they were using to find success in continuing to export. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Brent, do you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add this in because I kind of, this is a great site, and I just wanted to mention it again because this MXP, the Import Export Price Indexes, you can find this at www.bls.gov. I wanted to repeat that because in that, it has this great, so much information on markets. It's more specific. It can tell you where to go, not to go. I mean, of course, but I just wanted to show that because I'm not there's so much information in this world that I kind of really focus on market entry, what I can do well. But go to bls.gov and type in MXP, and it will show you those on the line that you can get much more information about what's going on globally. That's kind of not filtered through anything else. And it's just it's just data. And I know raw data can get boring, but this is a really great tool, the MXP tool. You can see it, and you can see relative to last year, 6 months ago, 6 years ago. It's pretty cool too, because I like information,
I love it. Brent, I'm telling you, someone in the audience is really happy to hear this because I'm getting a question from Sam earlier on during our panel discussion. Sam is wondering which countries in Asia are the most business friendly when it comes to exporting food and beverage products. I almost felt like, there you go, Brent, right? You want to specifically address that? Although I felt like you already pointed the references.
Yeah. There's so much. It's so hard off the top of my head that we have a colleague of mine in our Houston offices that focus on agriculture. So I'm sorry, but my mom told me early on, if you don't know, just say you don't know. But generally, Japan's a mature market. I'll say this. I'm just using this as an example. They kind of have their food supply in orders. But if you're selling a specialized whiskey, Japanese generally love good bourbons.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, in Vietnam, if you're selling a great bourbon, well, maybe they like some other sector. So it's really each specific country. It's kind of hard. I just don't know off the top of my head. My colleague is a agricultural specialist, but you can always go to our trade.gov. We have a tool at the top. It's market research, and we can help you provide data. We can help you get more specific data. But either way, if you reach out to our offices around the country, if you're not in Houston, or if you reach out to the Asian Society of Texas or Sonny at St. Thomas or Eric or Mark, we can help you get more information. But our websites, we have a tab that says market research and great information for you. And my colleague can help you out if you want to get more details.
That's fantastic, Brent. I think that answers better than any specific one, because as you're digging, you might discover more opportunities. Yeah. And it's not scary at all. Some of the data is visualized. In fact, it's amazing that, data presentation has been more interactive, so you can actually discover a lot of opportunities you might not be aware of before. So we're taking questions from the audience. If anybody joining us online, if you're watching from YouTube, feel free to drop your questions. I'm directing the next one from Jamel to Eric. And Jamel's wondering, how does EXIM compare against some of the private companies like Euler, for example?
That's a great question. Yeah. So there's government credit insurance, and then there's private sector credit insurance. So we basically pick up a couple areas of the credit insurance spectrum that the private doesn't want. And there's two different sides to that. On one side of it, it's going to be the small and medium-sized company. Now, a number that we would generally go by, and don't quote me on this, but it's kind of a border where they go into the private sector. If it's 5 million or more, and foreign receivables, we send them to the private sector. We can't compete with the private sector. We're not allowed to. It's in our charter. So when they get big enough and they have a lot, millions in foreign receivables, we say, hey, go to the private. We're gonna charge more and we're gonna be more inefficient. We want you to go to the private. So small and mid-sized company, we generally pick up that. And we also pick up one-off opportunities for higher risk countries or higher risk obligors, buyers. So everything else private kind of does and does very well. We just kind of pick up what they don't want. But it's a great question.
Thanks, Eric. So I actually have something else, coming in, because we had a lot of discussion about all these like shipping physical goods. I wonder, how about digital trade? Because, that might be an area that is not restricted from all these challenges we're facing. I just wonder if you have any thoughts or observation on the digital part of exporting.
Could you expand? What do you mean specifically about the digital side of exporting?
I guess it's, software applications, especially in the startup world. There's a lot of cross-border collaboration and transactions. I felt like maybe there are opportunities. There
are.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll take this, Eric and Mark. So on that front, I'll be brief as we close. It's generally, that's kind of an easier process, especially now because as a world now, we're much more freer about having these Zoom calls and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter, all that good stuff. So we're able to communicate. The thing about digital, and we got to be smart about this, and we can help you, is you have to have your intellectual property's got to be protected. You got to make sure that you're allowed to ship your software to a new market, the end users. There's a lot of important questions because, just for instance, dual use technology. You may be able to use it in the US to make A, but if you send it to another country, it can be used for B, and that B is a problem. So, there's a BIS, Department of Commerce. We can assist you and help you on finding out, getting your export licenses to make sure you can sell your goods overseas. That's the most important part, is are you allowed to legally sell your product, whether it's software or whether it's a can of corn? You need to make sure, because no one wants to get in trouble. But we have great tools on all of our websites where you can learn more about whether it's digital, startups. It's really there. And this is Sonny, I'll close on this from my end. It really is, the world is your oyster. What do you want to get specifically? And what do you want to do? And just start small, create a goal. Brent, I'm thinking about, we want to go into Singapore. Well, how do you do it? And just start small. And then as you grow and learn about working with Mark and the SBA, or Eric and EXIM, or us with the U.S. Commercial Service, or the Asia Society of Texas, everybody has answers and tools for you. And I would just say, take a deep breath. We're here. We have your back. Spend some time researching, and good things can happen, because they do happen all the time.
Thanks, Brent. That's perfectly closing remark on you. I wonder if Eric and Mark have any closing remarks for us to wrap up.
I do, Dr. Sonny. A couple of things. Dr. Sonny, you had a great question regarding digital. What came to my mind are services, whether it's architecture, engineering, consulting, in addition to brick and mortar and widgets and hardware, SBA, can finance, export finance services as well. And so that was the first thing that I wanted to share, Dr. Sonny, is that export financing from SBA can be utilized for services. Now, granted, the international trade loan is for land, building, and major equipment, but the export working capital and the export the export express can be used for service-related exporting businesses. Brent talked about patents, and Dr. Sunny, the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Center, they can assist with U.S. patents, and they can also provide information regarding international patents. So that's another thing to consider. The other thing, Dr. Sunny, is that SCORE, Chapter 37, there are 11,000 mentors, volunteers nationwide, and there's 150 volunteers right here in Houston. And SCORE has mentors who have international exporting expertise that have lived and worked in places such as Africa, Mexico, and have international export knowledge and subject matter expert. So that was the other thing that I would share. Finally, in conclusion, Dr. Sunny, two things. One, there's a very strong international trade ecosystem here in Houston, and that includes the U.S. Commercial Service and EXIM Bank and SBA. And just to remind the folks that we do have a United States Export Assistance Center right here in Houston, and that we didn't even mention it, Dr. Sunny, there's the Houston District Export Council. Finally, the last thing, Dr. Sunny, that I'd like to share is that we were sharing websites. One, please go to www.sba.gov/exporting. So all the things that I've talked about, Office of International Trade, the USIAC, export financing, STEP, all that is there. Secondly, Dr. Sunny, in regards to website, please visit our website, www.sba.gov/tx/Houston. And there you can sign up for our newsletter. You can download our resource guide, and it's a wealth of information, including international trade and export financing. Thank you, Dr. Sunny.
Amazing resources. Thank you so much, Mark and Brent and Eric. It's so much learning. We could go on and on. There's so much more to learn about. I really wanted to thank all of our participants joining us online, and thank again Asia Society Texas Center in partnership with Small Business Administration. Thank you to all of our speakers and all the staff members working behind the scenes. Really appreciate everybody's support. Hope you guys have a good night, and feel free to reach out to our speakers, check all the resources. We'll see you at the next event. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.